Revealed. How I transformed rejection into an amazing new life after selling our family home. Emma stared blankly at the boxes stacked sky-high in her family home. Once a sanctuary of laughter and warmth with sweet memories engraved in the walls, now it felt more like a prison of suffocating expectations and unfulfilled dreams. Losing her corporate job felt like a deep betrayal from a partner she had trusted implicitly. She had poured everything into that career. And yet here she was, a single mother on the precipice of impending chaos. The weight of rejection gnawing at her spirit, making her wonder if she could ever rise again. Lily's innocent excitement over spring flowers blooming beyond the yard only emphasized Emma's grief. After losing her job, money was thin, and practicality dictated she sell this home that had been passed down through generations. Following that logic felt like cutting a piece of her heart away, but she knew it was decision time. Her world straddled a tightrope of survival and sentiment. Each flickering thought of yanking Lily from this life of security left her breathless. As she grappled with these thoughts, she found herself amidst the swirling dust of the attic. A faint glimmer of gold caught her eye, and she unearthed her grandmother's tattered journal, cradling it like a fragile relic. Emma's fingers trembled as she flipped through the yellowed pages filled with inked stories of resilience and triumph amid struggle. Her grandmother had faced hard times too, heartbreak, loss and battle, but somehow, she had always emerged stronger. Emma felt an ember of hope spark in her chest as she envisioned a community art program inspired by these very stories. Maybe it was time to give children in town a safe space for expression, just as her grandmother had fought for. But fervor quickly twisted into dread. Gathering the courage to share her vision with the community center saw her in front of skeptical eyes and muted whispers. Doubts burst like bubbles around her in indulgence. They murmured, "Just a single mother looking for handouts." Those words clung to her like a cloak of shame, igniting her worst fears and feelings of inadequacy. Why hadn't she kept her corporate position? What made her think she could create something from nothing again? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each setback, that flickering hope dimmed instead of igniting the fierce determination she once felt. Emma wrestled with anguish that tore at her core. Faces of disbelieving older residents haunted her, filling her mind with their disapproval and worn-out expectations. The laughter that used to dance through her home seemed a distant echo, replaced by the heavy silence of worry. How could she give up now, knowing the children needed her? Her heart raced at the thought of confronting Orange, the hostile mother whose cutting remarks had sliced through Emma's resolve. Would she plummet back into shadows, or would she rise to claim her place? The weight of every rejection threatened to drown her newly buoyant spirit. Clenching the journal tightly, she felt her grandmother's strength resonate deep within her, propelling her toward the inevitable. With everything hanging by a thread, Emma knew she stood at a crucial juncture, one that could either sink her or lift her higher than she had ever imagined. What choice would she make when the world seemed so bleak? The morning sun filtered through the dusty attic window, illuminating motes of dust dancing like tiny stars through the air. Emma sat in that cramped space, the tattered journal still resting on her lap, its pages whispering tales of resilience and warmth that seemed almost surreal compared to the icy grip of reality tightening around her. With each line she had read, her grandmother's strength seeped into her bones, urging her to weave those stories into something tangible, something that could ignite hope. But was she strong enough? Self-doubt coursed through her like poison, constricting her thoughts. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched the journal tighter, the spine creaking softly under the pressure. She recalled the confrontational stares from the group that day, how their skepticism had felt like arrows aimed straight at her heart. It was a barrage she hadn't anticipated. The journal had given her a fleeting sense of clarity, but the world outside still loomed large and intimidating. She envisioned the art program, a vibrant explosion contrasting with the muted shadows of her reality. How could she channel her grandmother's legacy into something that would flourish? In that moment, a slight shift occurred within her, a budding resolve no longer rooted in the fear of rejection, but rather in the conviction that she had something valuable to offer. Fueled by that pulse of determination, Emma made her way downstairs, glancing at the remnants of her life scattered through the boxes. She had spent the past weeks trying to piece together a new existence, yet all those memories felt heavy, as if they bore down on her rather than lifting her up. Lily was playing in the garden, blissfully unaware of her mother's struggles, and Emma caught a glimpse of that lightness. What if she could reclaim some of that lightheartedness for herself? Picking up the phone, Emma hesitated, her thumb hovering over the contact for the community center. This simple action felt monumental. Would these people, her own potential collaborators, see her ambitious vision, or simply a sign of desperation? The fear of hearing the dismissive tones again gripped her gut. With a deep breath, she pressed call, each ring echoing in the silence that followed. Emma? The familiar voice on the other end was etched with curiosity. Hi Tara. I was wondering if we could meet. I want to talk about some ideas I have, Emma stammered, the anxiety creeping in as she felt the weight of her request. Sure. I'm curious. Let us sit down later this week. The conversation ended, leaving Emma with an unsettling mixture of exhilaration and fear. The distance between where she was and where she aspired to be loomed on the horizon. Yet she would face it head-on. With each day, she would carve a new identity filled with purpose, connecting with children and sharing her grandmother's stories. She envisioned those stories blossoming into art, echoes of her grandmother dancing off the walls of a new creative space. Days turned into practical steps as she began to jot down ideas, drafting a plan that was both ambitious and hopeful. Emma found herself daydreaming about the community's reactions, imagining faces glowing with inspiration rather than judgment. It was naive, she told herself, to think it would all come easily, but even the smallest flicker of excitement warmed her insides. As she put her ideas to paper, she could feel the tide of her self-doubt beginning to ebb, replaced with a sense of empowerment. However, the nagging fear of confrontation remained gnawing. The faces that put her down lingered in the shadows of her consciousness. In the midst of her brainstorming, she realized that confronting that fear head-on would be just as crucial as sharing her vision. Emma approached her never-ending list of tasks with renewed fervor, eager to shape something new out of her loss, yet acutely aware that the real challenges lay ahead. And as she prepared to embark on this path, she couldn't shake the feeling that the moment was nearing for her to meet Orange, to reclaim her own narrative once and for all. With every heartbeat, determination settled deeper within her. No more retreating. The thought sizzled like a match striking against surfacing wood, waiting to ignite. What exchanges awaited her, once she stood her ground against the forces of rejection and judgment? What strength could she unearth in that confrontation? The day of her meeting with Tara arrived, a culmination of anxious anticipation and burning desire to reclaim her narrative. Emma polished off the cup of coffee, not quite relishing the bitter taste, but using it as fuel, an illusion of significance in the face of her unease. Each sip brought her closer to the moment where everything she envisioned could start to materialize. Emerging from the depths of self-doubt, she gathered her notes and sketches, reminders of the fire igniting within her, propelling her forward. Walking toward the designated cafe felt like traversing a tightrope suspended between anxiety and purpose. She was astonished by the level of her determination in contrast to the paralyzing fear that had previously gripped her. Emma soon found herself at the entrance, taking a deep breath before stepping in. The familiar aroma of brewed coffee wafted around her, grounding her, reminding her of countless hours spent working on her grandmother's stories, the foundation upon which she stood today. Tara waved energetically from a corner table, a smile breaking through her serious expression. Emma managed to return the gesture, though her stomach twisted in knots. As she approached, she noted Tara's keen eyes assessing the folders under Emma's arm. Her curiosity piqued. This was the moment when her dreams could either take flight or crash into the merciless ground of fate. Emma, I'm excited to hear what you've been working on, Tara exclaimed, motioning for her to take a seat. The command in her tone forced the guardrails of Emma's anxiety to loosen slightly, granting her permission to breathe. Thanks, Tara. I've been inspired by my grandmother's life and stories. I want to integrate art into our community. I believe it can make a real difference. The words spilled from her lips, almost too quickly, driven by an urgency to be heard. Tara leaned in, her interest visibly heightened. What kind of art are you thinking about? Emma could see her opening, and she seized it with both hands. I'm envisioning interactive workshops where children can express themselves through painting, storytelling, and even theater. Each piece could draw from tales of resilience and imagination. Stories that have shaped me, she emphasized, feeling her own narrative transform into a beacon of possibility. As the conversation unfolded, Emma felt her ideas unspool like threads connecting her passion to tangible outcomes. Tara listened intently, asking questions that guided Emma deeper into her vision, pushing her to articulate what she had previously only scribbled in the margins of her life. No longer was she the timid woman fraught with uncertainty. She was the architect of an experience that beckoned to breathe life into the community. Suddenly, Tara paused, her brow furrowed. It sounds incredible, but how do you plan to overcome criticism? You faced dismissive reactions before, remember? The pragmatic edge in her tone struck a chord, reigniting the shadows of doubt Emma thought she had banished. For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Those faces that had so easily belittled her crept back into her mind, casting a pall over the vibrancy she had tried to create. But then, just as quickly, the warmth of her grandmother's legacy surged back, flooding her thoughts with strength. I'll use that criticism as fuel, Emma answered instinctively, her conviction unwavering now. They can either be hindered by their perceptions or inspired by true resilience. Just like my grandmother did. The words held power, chipping away the remnants of doubt. Emma realized she hadn't just been identifying the world around her. She was defining her space within it, drawing boundaries against negativity. She observed Tara nodding, impressed by her resolve. Reflecting on her last comment, an exhilarating wave rushed through her, excitement mingling with apprehension. Questions of fundraising, logistics, and outreach began bubbling up. Was she really ready to face the forthcoming confrontations? With renewed purpose, Emma detailed her blueprint for the project, but the question of whether she could endure the scrutiny nagged at the edge of her arc of confidence. The meeting went longer than she expected, Tara becoming an active collaborator rather than just a sounding board. As they both concluded, Tara smiled, a knowing glimmer in her eyes. I can see how passionate you are, Emma. We'll need to rally support and make this happen. Emma's heart raced with the thrill of potential. Yet, she still felt the shadows of doubt lurking at the back of her mind like an unwanted afterthought. Can I ask you something? Tara glanced thoughtfully at Emma. What happens the moment you face those critics again? Are you ready to tell your story, confront them, and even your past? Emma's breath caught in her throat, her resolve now confronted with an undeniable reality. She needed to prepare for an encounter that would test not only her articulation, but the very core of her identity. What would she become in that confrontation? Could the act of sharing her grandmother's legacy become her liberation? As the echoes of their dialogue faded behind her, the intrigue crackled through the air like a live wire. What revelations awaited her when she truly stepped into the ring? Emma left the cafe, the weight of Tara's final question heavy on her shoulders. Each step felt as if she were carrying 100 invisible bricks, reminders of the criticism she had faced. While excitement welled within her, mingled apprehension added a dark, nebulous cloud overhead. What did it truly mean to confront those who doubted her? As she walked home, a rush of memories enveloped her, moments spent in her childhood home, filled with her grandmother's laughter and stories. Those memories spoke of strength and resilience, contrary to the belittling words from critics. But what would happen when she faced them again? Would she remember those lessons? Or would she crumble like a house of cards at the faintest whisper of doubt? Her heart raced as she entered her apartment and plopped down onto the couch, the familiar surroundings now feeling like an echo of her insecurity. Breathing deeply, Emma opened her sketchbook, which lay abandoned on the coffee table. Flipping through the pages, she revisited her ideas, the workshops, the expressions, the stories, all ignited by her grandmother's legacy. They surged through her like electricity, reminding her of her purpose. Suddenly, an idea struck her. What if she documented her journey? Capturing each step would not only maintain clarity in her visions, but also serve as a testament to her progression. The thought provided a surge of energy, urging her to act. She grabbed a pen, jotting down her intentions as if rearranging puzzle pieces that had long been scattered. At that moment, Emma saw more than just sketches. She envisioned a narrative unfolding. She would confront her critics, not through aggression, but with authenticity and a grounded sense of self. Sharing her grandmother's legacy became an act of empowerment rather than a defense. This was a story about resilience, familial bonds, and ultimately, overcoming fear. The clarity brought her comfort. Yet questions danced on the periphery. Would the documentation be enough? Would it shield her from harsh eyes? She pushed these thoughts aside, focused instead on writing down each strategy she might deploy. How could she create a space where her art would resonate? As hours passed, Emma sketched an outline for her first workshop. The themes were very much her grandmother's stories, tales that shaped bravery, humility, and the power of a voice. Each segment could echo not only her personal experiences, but also invite others to find strength in their narratives. However, the seeds of self-doubt took root once more, nestled into her thoughts. What if no one showed up? What if her ideas fell flat under the scrutinizing gaze of her past critics? The shadows returned, whispering cruel reminders that she had faced rejection before. No, she said aloud, catching her reflection in the window. I won't let fear dictate who I am. I'm going to write my own story. There's power in my voice. The words ignited a flicker of fire within her, a promise to stand against the tide of negativity. Before she knew it, dawn broke outside, brightly spilling light across her workspace, a metaphorical embodiment of her awakening. The world felt expansive, teeming with possibility. Testing herself now became an exhilarating challenge, not an impending doom. The transition into action was necessary. It was time for her to act, to rise. Just as calm settled over her, an email notification pinged from her laptop, jolting her back to reality. It was from Tara, suggesting a strategy session to outline their next steps. With her heart pounding, excitement crawled back in. A turning point loomed, one ripe with decisions that could either solidify her vision or amplify her fears. Yet a deeper question lingered. Was she prepared to spin her fears into courage, like threads woven into a tapestry of experience? Emma took a deep breath, realizing this was only the beginning. The moment had arrived for action, for commitment to her newfound voice. But would her path lead to triumph or conflict again? As she rushed to respond to Tara, determination surged through her veins. This was it. This was the start of her story in a way she had never dared to dream before. Would she finally face the reflection of her critics with unwavering resolve? The answer awaited her, just beyond the horizon. Emma could hardly focus on the words in Tara's email. Each heartbeat felt like a drum echoing her uncertainty, each thud reminding her of the fears she had previously buried. She typed a quick response, though her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. What if Tara's enthusiasm wasn't mirrored in her own performance? What if their plans crumbled under the weight of her insecurities? With a sigh, she could almost hear her grandmother whispering, urging her to keep moving forward. Still, confronting her fears wasn't as straightforward as listing objectives or sketching plans. It was about facing the inner turmoil that often screamed louder than any critic's voice. The idea of the workshop lingered in her mind, an abstract vision of possibility tainted by self-doubt. As she awaited Tara's reply, Emma forced herself to regroup, returning to her notes. She scribbled a list of affirmations, words intentionally chosen to dissolve the lingering doubts, a mantra of sorts. I have a voice. My art is valid. I am more than past judgments. It was a small act of defiance against the shadows of her past. The repetitive motion of writing calmed her mind, granting clarity. Introspection turned into motivation, blossoming into strategy. Emma shifted the focus outward, envisioning her first workshop not as a performance, but as an opportunity for connection, a shared exchange of stories where vulnerability could breed understanding. Hours slipped away as she delved deeper, researching outreach strategies and community platforms. She identified local establishments that might house her workshops, forcing herself to accept the reality of its unique potential. But even with newfound resolve, Her mind scuttled back to the pit of criticism that awaited. Would the audiences resonate or judge? The looming meeting with Tara approached. Emma stood in front of her mirror, her heart racing. She practiced her pitch for the first workshop, allowing her voice to fill the quiet of the room. With each phrase, she built herself up, reminding herself of the power embodied in her intent. Eventually, she caught a glimpse of strength in her reflection, as if she were tethering her fear to that assertion. Before she knew it, the time for her strategy session arrived. Tara's energy filled the room, wrapping around Emma like a comforting blanket. Ideas flew between them, a dynamic exchange that fanned the flames of Emma's inspiration. Tara shared her insights on marketing approaches while Emma unveiled her vision for the workshops. As conversations flowed, a seed of confidence began to sprout within Emma. Each discussion pushed back against the self-doubt that had gripped her tightly only days before. They plotted an agenda for their meeting with prospective venues, a plan that felt increasingly tangible with each passing moment. Yet the undercurrent of apprehension still throbbed in the back of her mind. She could hardly shake the feeling that she hadn't surmounted her fears entirely. "Emma, I can tell you're holding back," Tara suddenly said, her eyebrows furrowing with concern. "We're in this together, remember? You don't have to carry this alone." That single acknowledgement cut straight through Emma's fluency in self-doubt. It exposed the unspoken truth she had been hesitant to confront. A battle raged in her mind, the part of her that feared rejection, that worried what others would say, versus the part craving authenticity and connection. "Maybe what if we included a Q&A segment in the workshops?" Emma suggested, veering away from her own hesitations long enough to shift focus. "Opening the floor could ease some of the engagement pressure. It'll make it less about me and give space for others to share too." Tara nodded enthusiastically. Yet Emma felt the weight of her own hesitations crushing back in. Would anyone actually want to ask questions? And if so, were they questions she had the courage to answer? As they finalized their plans, the thought clawed back to Emma's throat. The meeting with potential venue owners loomed ahead, bringing her comfort and fear to the surface. She couldn't help but wonder if she was ready for the inevitable scrutiny, prepared to leverage newfound courage against her critics. That evening, Emma sat down once again, looking over her notes. The overwhelming desire for authentic expression pulsed within her. In the dawning light of her dreams, she felt stronger, but a nagging voice persisted, whispering a reminder of the past. Would she be able to stand tall against her critics when they emerged from the shadows? The answer beckoned, filled with uncertainty, like the promise of thunder rolling in on a clear day, loud and clear. Emma awoke the next morning to the sun filtering through her curtained window, wrapping her in a hesitant embrace of warmth. It felt like a new day, yet again a continuation of her journey, but now tinged with the anxiety of the approaching meeting. Her heart raced as she thought about the venue owners. What if they saw through her facade of confidence and scrutinized her every word? Every doubt welled up in her chest, but she brushed them aside like leaves in the wind. Today she was doing something different. Today, she would confront the undercurrents of her fear with intention. After a quick breakfast, she settled at her desk once more, the clutter of research and brainstorming notes surrounding her. Her affirmation list caught her eye. She traced her finger over the words, feeling the weight of each declaration, willing their strength to seep into her veins. With renewed determination, she envisioned the workshop not just as an obligation but as a canvas where she could paint her voice and cultivate community. The minutes melted away until Tara's text arrived, asking her to meet at the coffee shop they had discussed earlier. Emma felt the familiar twinge of nerves prick her stomach, but she steadied herself. This was an opportunity, a chance to share her vision and reclaim a part of herself that had often been silenced. As she walked to the cafe, the streets buzzed with morning energy. Instead of retreating into her mind, she focused on each step, breathing deeply and reminding herself of her purpose. Every passerby became an echo of potential, each moment a reminder of her journey toward authenticity. In the cafe, Tara's smile welcomed her like a loyal friend. Their conversation flowed, picking up from where they had left off, but Emma could sense an intensity in her partner's demeanor. Tara leaned in, her eyes scanning Emma's face. "You look ready to take on the world, but I also see that doubt creeping back in," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. Emma hesitated. What if they see me as a fraud? What if I can't meet their expectations? Tara's expression softened. What if you don't need to meet those expectations? What if you simply need to be yourself? Remember the Q&A idea? That's you opening the door for connection, not performance. Shivers of realization danced along Emma's spine. A connection her ultimate aim wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about inviting others into her story. The idea of being vulnerable began to shift from a source of fear into a beacon of strength. The meeting with the venue owners approached swiftly, and Tara's presence felt like an anchor amidst the brewing storm. They debated over responses, preparing for different types of questions. What if someone challenged her perspective? What if they pushed back? The fear lingered, but now it felt interwoven with resolve. Finally, they arrived at the venue. The fresh scent of coffee mixed with anticipation filled the air, and Emma felt her pulse quicken. The owners greeted them with friendly nods, but as they settled into their seats, the mood shifted to something more serious. Emma listened intently as Tara led the discussion about their vision. Despite her fear wanting to hold her back, Emma felt knots in her throat beginning to loosen as she contributed ideas, her voice inching closer to her true self with each word. A critical question arose. What makes your workshop different from all the others? Emma's heart raced, but for the first time, she didn't recoil. She leaned forward, gathering strength from the affirmation scrolling through her mind. This workshop is an invitation to dive deep into not just the art we create, but into our individual stories that often intertwine and reflect our humanity. The words rolled off her tongue with a confidence that surprised even her. The owners exchanged glances, and Emma awaited their judgment, her mind flashing back to all the times she had felt unworthy. But today was different. Today, she fought against those shadows, armed with her resolve to grow. Tara chimed in reinforcing Emma's point. They discussed how the Q&A segment would engage participants, lessening the pressure on Emma and shifting it toward shared experiences. Slowly, the tension began to ease. By the time the meeting concluded, Emma felt fatigue, but also a new spark igniting within her. They left the cafe with a tentative agreement, but it was more than that. Emma had exchanged shallow reassurance for the resonance of her voice at last. Walking home, the sun lighting her path, she allowed herself to bask in a feeling that had long evaded her. Hope. Perhaps she was inching closer to overcoming not just the critique of others, but the judgment she had feared most, her own. Somewhere deep down, she began to accept that the fear of rejection might never wholly dissolve. But the power of her resolve was carving an unshakable path forward. As she turned a corner, ready to implement what she had learned, she suddenly froze. A shadow from her past emerged. The familiar face sent chills down her spine, a haunting reminder of all her earlier fears. But somewhere in the distance, a small flicker of courage beckoned, pulling her forward into the unknown. Would she challenge the specter of her past, or bend under its weight yet again? The moment of truth loomed just ahead. Emma's heart thundered as the shadow moved closer, the face behind it sharpening into focus. It was Ryan, an old acquaintance from her past, someone who had once proudly called her an underachiever when she faltered in pursuing her dreams. His derisive laughter still echoed in the chambers of her mind, resurrecting all the insecurities she thought she had buried. Emma, is that you? Ryan's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, dripping with something between curiosity and a hint of condescension. Staring back at him, Emma felt the familiar tangles of anxiety twist in her stomach. This was not the reunion she envisioned. Whether it was a malicious twist of fate or simply coincidence, it felt like a challenge. I didn't expect to see you here, she replied, forcing air into her voice amidst a rushing tide of doubt. What brings you to this part of town? I'm still in the area, trying to stay connected with the community, you know? And what about you? Still chasing those creative dreams? His smile betrayed a hint of mockery. Her resolve appeared to waver under the weight of judgment. Yet as she stood there, the adrenaline of her recent accomplishments fought against his derision. Today she had voiced her vision, made an agreement with the venue owners, and had declared her intention to embrace her story. Was she truly going to let this specter from her past derail her progress? No. Emma's response cut through the air, sharper than she intended. I'm ready to launch something meaningful, something that embraces the stories that shape us, she declared, feeling a thrill of defiance rise within her. Ryan raised an eyebrow, surprised by her shift in tone. Good for you, but be careful. The real world can be unforgiving. Emma took a breath, steadying the quaking in her chest. You know what, Ryan? I believe the real world is what we make of it. I'm not afraid of what lies ahead anymore. His brow furrowed, an unfamiliar expression creeping onto his face. For the first time he seem so lofty, his confidence wavering in the face of her newfound determination. By releasing such pent-up energy, Emma felt a crack in the dam of her own perception. This wasn't just a conversation. It was her chance to confront the ghosts that had haunted her for too long. She flexed the muscles of her self-approval, hungry for a moment that strengthened her footing. Ryan seemed to sense the shift in power, a discomfort gnawing at his bravado. Well, good luck with that. Just don't be surprised when it all comes crashing down, he retorted, masking his unease behind thinly veiled sarcasm as he stepped back into the crowd. Emma watched him retreat, a sense of empowerment budding where doubt had long rooted itself. Each encounter with her past was less about reliving old wounds, and more about redefining what they meant. Stepping away from Ryan, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. Each step away felt like a reminder that she was not that girl anymore. She was redefining herself every day. As Emma resumed her path, a new wave of inspiration surged through her veins. She was no longer the girl chasing shadows, but a woman determined to illuminate her truths. Her thoughts wandered back to the workshop, to the openness she sought to create. What did it mean to invite others into a vulnerable space? Could she offer them a sanctuary built from her own scars? Just as those thoughts crystallized, a text buzzed in her pocket. Tara had messaged, asking if she'd like to meet to discuss further steps regarding their workshop. Emma stared at her phone, grappling with excitement and fear yet again. She inhaled deeply. This was the moment to act. She couldn't let the specters of self-doubt linger. She was ready to actively shape her narrative, confront her fears, and champion others in their journeys too. The recipient of her next message wouldn't just be her partner. It would be an invitation for herself to step fully into the role she was creating. What Emma didn't expect, however, was an incoming call from an unknown number just moments later. Should she answer it, or let it go to voicemail? Something in her gut whispered that it was significant. After all, the universe had a funny way of testing resolve. With uncertainty flipping like a coin in the air, Emma pressed accept, holding her breath for what might unfold. Hello? Emma's voice emerged from her throat, strained and curious, the way it did during childhood when facing unexpected guests at her doorstep. Is this Emma Sanders? The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative, shaking her cocoon of certainty. Yes, it is, she replied, unsure of what this interaction could unfurl. The name hadn't hung in the air for long before a wave of nostalgia crashed over her. A reminder of her earlier days when opportunities felt washed away by tides of self-doubt. I'm Detective Harris, the voice continued. I'm reaching out regarding an inquiry about your father's estate. The air surged out of her lungs as if sucked into a vacuum. Her father hadn't crossed her mind much since their last strained conversation at the hospital weeks ago. His health had declined and with it, the rigidity of family ties that once felt unbreakable. What about my father's estate? She managed to ask, her heart racing. There are some matters left unresolved regarding the property you inherited. Emma's thoughts raced, swirling around her father's once vibrant personality, and the emptiness that echoed off the walls of their family home. I wasn't aware of any issues. The words spilled out cautiously. The dread of unavoidable confrontation loomed large. The home had always been a burden, yet a piece of her heart twined tightly with its walls. It seems there are financial implications, debts that were accrued while he was ill, Detective Harris explained. I'll need to speak with you in person. We need to arrange a time to meet and go over everything. A pit formed in her stomach. It was as if a heavy chain wrapped around her, pulling her back into the shadows she was desperate to escape. Could this be another test of her resolve? She thought of Ryan's sneering comment, the way it had ignited something in her. She was ready to embrace her journey. But here lay the specter of her father, the weight of expectation, disappointment and obligation. Can we meet tomorrow? Emma offered, trying to wrestle control over her anxiety into a semblance of determination. Tomorrow works, he said. I'll send you the details. As she hung up, disbelief washed over her like an icy shower. She could hardly process the magnitude of what was unfolding. She had not anticipated steering through a financial minefield while launching her new venture. The weight pressed hard against her chest, and once more, she felt the claws of doubt begin to slip into her resolve. But this time, instead of crumbling, she made a choice. Emma tapped out a reply to Tara's message, her fingers dancing across the screen, drafting a time to meet an opportunity to align their vision. In that moment of realization, Emma saw her path bifurcating. A choice between submission to familial obligations or claiming her narrative in commanding fashion. The bustling streets enveloped her, people hurrying past absorbed in their own worlds, each face hiding its own stories. Emma took a deep breath, a sensation of empowerment washing over her again, ebbing the anxiety still writhing within. She recognized the duality that often defined her life's strength and vulnerability, ambition and fear. She balanced in the middle, poised to harness both sides to create the beautiful sanctuary she envisioned. Later that evening, as she prepared for their meeting in her small apartment, gathering thoughts on how to navigate the upcoming conversation with Detective Harris, Emma felt a pull toward her future. There was something fragile yet fierce growing inside her. What if facing her past would enable her to reclaim ownership over her present? A perpetual uncertainty nagged at her, forcing her to confront both her father's legacy and the self-doubt he had instilled. She finished assembling her notes, her determined essence pulsating within her as the dialogue played over in her head. This is your life, Emma. Seize it. The following day held promise and peril, a balance teetering on the edge of revelation. As she stepped into the morning, she resolved to dismantle the remnants of her past, brick by brick, each decision a forging into who she was becoming. But the question remained, was she truly ready to face the abyss of her father's expectations, especially when a hidden ally from her past had re-entered? Emma's heart raced with both exhilaration and trepidation as the boundary between acceptance and confrontation hovered tantalizingly close. She spotted a familiar figure ahead on the street, her breath hitching again, a figure that pulled her deeper into a confrontation she hadn't anticipated. Would this encounter disrupt her fragile equilibrium, or grant her the strength she desperately sought? Emma felt her heart lurch as she recognized the figure before her, Ryan, someone who had been both a source of support and contention in her past. His back was turned, but a familiar silhouette conjured memories of late-night talks, laughter, and harsh judgments. They had shared dreams once, but now the air felt visceral, weighed down by unresolved feelings. Emma? The voice broke through her reverie, rich with disbelief and an undertone of longing. She straightened her spine, gathering her courage. Ryan, what are you doing here? He turned to face her, eyes scanning her determined grip on her notes, the beads of sweat glistening on her brow. I was just in the area and thought maybe I would check in on me? Emma interrupted, frustration spilling forth. Or were you hoping to gloat about your latest successes? Ryan's expression shifted, a blend of surprise and defensiveness. That's not fair. I came to see how you've been, especially with everything happening with your dad. That statement cut deep. The complexities of their past hung between them like an uninvited guest. Her father's estate loomed large in her mind, and now Ryan had unwittingly pushed her back toward that turmoil. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her purpose. Look, I'm meeting with Detective Harris today, she confessed, watching his reaction, wondering if this revelation would bridge their past or deepen the chasm. Ryan's frown deepened. Emma, you can talk to me about this. You don't have to handle it alone. The old Emma might have crumbled at the suggestion, wanting desperately to lean into the familiar comfort of his support. But this Emma, infused with a deeper sense of agency, shook her head. I appreciate that, but I need to do this for myself. I've spent too long allowing my father's mistakes to dictate my life. His silence spoke volumes, and she could feel the weight of their shared history in the air. For a moment, the world around them slipped away, cars whizzing past, pedestrians moving like shadows. It was just the two of them, standing on the precipice of what could have been and what was possible. She had to decide. Would she step toward the potential rekindling of their relationship? Or would she plant roots firmly in her future, devoid of past expectations? Emma, I know we didn't end things well, he ventured slowly, searching her eyes for an opening. But I've changed. I've really tried to grow since we broke up? Emma interjected, the tightness in her throat betraying her feelings. You're right, we both have changed. But telling me that now won't erase who you were then, nor will it change your impression of me now. I'm not that person anymore. There was a flicker of hope in his gaze, but more than that, she saw a reflection of herself. This confrontation was not about him. It was about reclaiming her narrative. She needed to be firm in her truth, valuing growth over nostalgia. Emma gathered herself, fueling her raw emotions with resolve. I'm about to take some significant steps in my life, Ryan. I have my own journey to map out, and I can't allow anyone, including you, to distract me from that. Ryan sighed, disappointment crossing his face. I get it, Emma. I do. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you need anything. Thank you, she replied, softening slightly. But even in this moment of vulnerability, she recognized that allowing him back into her life could unravel the hard-earned progress she had begun. With a final nod, she stepped away, feeling lighter despite the impending meeting. The conversation with Ryan had further crystallized her resolve. She was not simply facing her father's legacy today, but she was ready to define her future on her terms, no longer caught in the shadow of his choices. But as she hurried toward her destination, a nagging thought lingered. What if Ryan had changed more than she was willing to accept? Could he be a strategic ally rather than a distraction? Emma's heart raced anew with curiosity and caution, the potential for connection teetering uncomfortably on the edge of her resolve. The meeting with Detective Harris was not just about the estate. It was the gateway to unlocking deeper truths about herself. And as she approached the office building, the question loomed. The answers she sought today could redefine everything she thought she knew about herself and her past. Emma inhaled deeply, reminding herself of her mantra. This is your life, Emma. Seize it. The door swung open and she stepped inside, steeling herself for what awaited on the other side. Would the conversation reveal the hidden depths of her father's choices, or open doors to new paths she hadn't yet seen? Emma sat across from Detective Harris in the sterile office, the air thick with anticipation. The weight of her father's legacy loomed over her, a mix of unresolved emotions and the harsh reality of debts that had accumulated during his last months. This was no longer just a meeting about financial matters. This was a confrontation with the ghosts of her past. Thank you for coming in today, Emma, he began, his voice steady yet devoid of warmth. As mentioned, we need to discuss the debts associated with your father's estate. Emma clenched her fists, grounding herself in the present. She had spent too long letting fear shape her narrative, allowing the echoes of past disappointments to anchor her. I'm ready, she asserted, surprising herself with the strength behind her words. As Detective Harris explained the financial implications, Emma focused on the words rather than the emotions they stirred within her. He spoke of unpaid bills and mounting interest. It felt less like a judgment on her father, and more like a structural opportunity for her to reclaim power over her narrative. Emma, this is a substantial amount, he said, glancing up from his notes. We will need to consider how to manage these debts moving forward. Manage? She echoed, realizing that the situation demanded strategic action. I'm not going to run from this. My father's choices may have put us in this position, but I'm the one who can clean it up. His eyebrows raised slightly, perhaps surprised by her resolute stance. That's the spirit. This requires not just a plan but also, frankly, a path forward. She nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. If she could dismantle the weight of her father's past, maybe she could carve out space for genuine growth in her own life. This was the moment for her to stand firm, to take back the narrative that had slipped through her fingers for so long. So, what do we need to do? She asked, her voice gaining strength. Detective Harris outlined the necessary steps, arranging for the debts to be reviewed, contacting creditors, and documenting her father's estate. Each item on the list felt like a stepping stone away from the burden of disillusionment she had carried for far too long. For the first time, she saw possibility lurking where she previously felt only despair. Emma left the office invigorated, the shadows of her past starting to dissipate like morning mist. She was ready to confront what had held her back, the financial turbulence fueled by her father's actions. These were no longer just unpaid bills. They were opportunities for honest dialogues and resolve. As she walked toward her apartment, her phone buzzed with a message from Tara, reminding her of their upcoming workshop. Emma smiled, the reminder of purpose reigniting her drive. It wasn't enough to solve her father's financial mess, but she realized that immersing herself in her art program with the community could help her reclaim the joy that had been lost. By the time she reached home, a storm of thoughts and feelings raged within her. The commitment to manage her father's estate was daunting, but there was no going back to a life defined by his failures. Instead, she was cultivating her own future, a future filled with creative empowerment and community connection. Sitting at her desk, Emma opened her sketchbook, the one filled with her visions for the art workshops. With renewed attention, she began to draft an outline, infusing the details with fervor. Each piece of the program began to feel not just like a project, but a testament to her growth, a way to channel resilience into her work. She wrote about creating spaces where children could express themselves freely, drawing from their own stories, just like her grandmother had encouraged her. A powerful legacy was unfolding, one dictated not by fear, but by possibility. She was ready to showcase not only her journey, but also invite others into the transformative power of storytelling and art. When the days blurred into the week leading up to the workshop's launch, Emma eagerly finalized the details for the event. The excitement in her stomach began to eclipse the pangs of anxiety. And then, on the morning of the workshop, she stood in front of the room filled with shimmering faces, children full of wonder. As she took a deep breath and opened her mouth to welcome them, a wave of solid confidence settled over her. Today, we're going to explore the stories that make us who we are, she began, the words spilling forth with an authenticity she hadn't known she possessed. With each session, she saw the children transform. They painted, drew, and told their stories, waving flags of resilience in the face of societal expectations. Emma realized that every sketch made, every emotion shared, fed her own spirit and confirmed that this was where she belonged. In those moments, as laughter rang out amidst the creative chaos, Emma felt recognized not just as a facilitator of connections, but as a beacon of empowerment. The validation she craved began, unlike before, to pour in. There was no longer a chuckle of disbelief. There was joy, hope, and unfettered expression. Looking around the room filled with laughter, she felt the weight of her father's choices guide her rather than bind her. Each child's supportive gaze was a testament to the importance of her work, and the courage she had mustered to embrace her adversities and shared histories. As the workshop reached its crescendo, Emma acknowledged that she had transformed beyond the walls of expectations. With her eyes sparkling with tears of profound joy, she understood the power of not just telling her story, but empowering others to share theirs. Emma wasn't just recovering from rejection. She was conquering doubts, affirming her voice, and building a narrative bridged on resilience. The cycle was complete. Emma smiled again, knowing with absolute certainty that she had conquered her past and emerged as a capable architect of her future. She had grown, not only as a mother or an artist, but as a leader in her community. This moment of clarity wasn't just personal achievement. It was a profound transformation, a fulfillment of the promise she had made to herself so long before. She had faced the shadows, challenged the doubts, and turned her rejection into an amazing new life, one built on her own terms. Now more than ever, Emma felt empowered to continue sharing her voice, to help others find theirs, and to invite everyone to embark on their journeys of transformation. To the supporters of this inspiring story, I demand that you take action now. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you never miss these exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is vital. Comment below right now with your reactions or theories about Emma's incredible journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Every true fan of personal overcoming stories knows how important it is to support our channel in these ways, so act now.